Hey everybody, it's good being with you all today. This past week we've been reading 1 Corinthians 5 through 10, and this upcoming week we're going to be continue reading in 1 Corinthians chapters 11 through 16. Now, as we've read through the book of Corinthians, we see the church in Corinth, and they got some problems. And many of these people they're coming from a pagan background. That means that pagan means that they're worshiping idols like Zeus and Apollo and Hera and Artemis and a bunch of other these Greco-Roman gods. Now, there seems to have been a misunderstanding within the Corinth church about grace, and so they think that grace is cheap, because of Jesus and what he's done for them, that they can just do whatever they want, and their sins are covered, their sins are washed away, and so it's no big deal if they're sleeping around, or if they're worshiping idols, or if they're doing stuff that they shouldn't do. And so Paul is writing this letter to correct a lot of these kind of bad misunderstandings that they have. And so he, in chapters 5, 6, and 7, he deals with the issues on sexual immorality. And later in the book, he's going to deal with some other stuff. But we're going to focus today on chapter 8, which is pretty interesting. So let's take a look at this idea of food being offered to idols. So in Corinth, they would have had a lot of temples, like a temple to each one of these different gods that we've mentioned. So each one of these temples at various parts throughout the year would have had religious festivals. And at these religious festivals, they would have offered sacrifices to these gods. And these sacrifices, these food offerings, would be then taken, and the people who worship these gods would have eaten that food. And it's a way of kind of participating in the worship of this god. Now, there would have been a lot of leftover food, and then that food would have been taken and sold in the marketplaces, and people would have taken that home and eaten with them. So, Paul, he starts in chapter 8 with this this knowledge versus love. And he says, verses 1 through 3, he says, "Now concerning food offered to idols, we know that all of us possess knowledge. This knowledge puffs up, it kind of like a balloon blowing up." He says, "But love builds up." And so that's different. Like something that is built up is more substantial, it's more solid, it's more firm. Something that is puffed up is hollow, it is empty, it has the appearance of looking big, but really there's nothing inside of it. And so he says, if anyone imagines that he knows something, he doesn't know as he should know. But if anyone loves God, he is known by God. And so that's the kind of knowledge that we want. We want to be known by God. And so this issue of food offered to idols, they are, these Christians, they are going to either the marketplaces or even possibly the temple, and they're getting food and they're eating it. Now, Paul says, hey, you know what? No big deal. Because we know, again, there's that knowledge again, that there's only one God. And so, Zeus, Apollo, Hera, Artemis, all these other guys, we don't really, we're not really concerned about them because they're just statues. It's just wood or stone or metal. There's nothing behind it. And so he's not really concerned about that. He says, however, there's a bigger issue here. It's not just about eating the food. It's also about the people around you. He says, not all possess this knowledge. Not everybody really understands this the way that we do. They may have a belief or a deep faith that there are other spiritual forces, other gods out there. And he says that some, because of their former associations with idols, they're going to see you eating this food, and because their conscience is weak, it's going to be hard for them. It's going to be a struggle for them. They are going to be potentially tempted to participate in idol worship, and that's bad. That's wrong. We don't want that. And so this food that was used to worship idols, while in and of itself it's just food, it's not a big deal. But when people who might be tempted to worship idols see Christians participating in that, it then becomes not an issue about knowledge, but an issue about love. love for our neighbors. And so Paul is saying that in verses like 9 and 10, he says that their right to eat whatever they choose is becoming a stumbling block for others to worship idols. So he's saying like, hey, look, you need to put other people, your love for others, in front of, your personal knowledge or your personal right, because that knowledge is going to destroy your brother. And he says that, Paul says that he loves his brother so much that he would, he'd never eat meat again. Now, this seems like probably a pretty distant idea for a lot of us. We don't really have, temples here in, the southeastern United States where we are. It's not really that big of a deal. However, there are other issues at stake here. So take, for example, you might at some point in your life have a friend who maybe had a bad, maybe they struggle with alcoholism. Maybe they've been an alcoholic and they've since turned their life around and they don't drink anymore. And you say, hey, let's go to the football game. Now, to this person, they in their head might think like, okay, when you go to the football game, you tailgate and you drink and you get to the stadium and you drink some more. And so the football game, which is not an issue, becomes a stumbling block for this person that you care about to do something that they shouldn't do. And so, we don't want to put our right or something that is like, hey, this thing isn't a problem, this isn't a bad thing, in front of our care and our love and the well-being of someone else. Now, there are lots of examples, and I'd love to hear in the comments below kind of maybe some ways that you're processing this, or where you might see times in your life where something that seems pretty innocent could potentially be an issue for another person, and out of love, we can respect that person and choose to put them and what's good for them in front of what we want or what is our own personal desires. Anyway, love you guys. I hope you're having a great week, and see you all again soon. Grace and peace.